Number 1. The Night. This happened back in the early 1960s. My family at the time lived in rural West Virginia. We also had a big family. My mom was one out of 12 kids. She grew up in an extremely rural shack with her extremely poor family. She got pregnant with me at a young age and married to my father. My dad didn't constantly work, so we didn't constantly have any money. But we always had a place to live because one of my mom's older brothers had an old house nestled into a holler that he let us rent from. This was an extremely rural area. We lived up in the hills and the roads weren't even gravel at the time. They were all dirt roads, and it took nearly an hour's worth of driving to get off the country roads onto the main ones. We normally didn't have a whole lot to do when we were younger at night time. The house was an old house, but it did have electricity. We didn't have a television, but we did have a radio, so a lot of the time that we were allowed to be up late, which wasn't often, we were up listening to the radio, the shows and the baseball games. This happened one summer night, and we were all up late listening to the radio. It was me, my 3 younger siblings, my mom, and my dad. I don't really know how late it was because I was pretty young at the time. One particular thing about the house was that it was set back maybe 100 feet into the holler. The living room faced the front of the house and the driveway, so if someone were to pull into the driveway, we would always either see the car pulling in during the day or we would see the headlights pulling in at night. On this particular night, I think we were all surprised to see the headlights showing that a vehicle was pulling into the driveway. My dad got up and he walked up to the window and looked at it. We kept a shotgun sitting by the front door at all times. My dad was generally a very suspicious man as well, but he didn't reach for the gun. That indicated to us that he knew who it was that was coming to the door. Also, if he hadn't known who it was, he would have told us kids to get into the bedroom at the back of the house. It only took him a moment before he opened the door. It was his younger brother, my Uncle Bill. So first we began to relax. It had been weird seeing someone pull up to the house so late at night, but we always enjoyed seeing Bill. The feeling of relaxation didn't last very long, however. I guess we couldn't tell that Bill was really upset about something at the time, but even as younger kids, we could tell something was off. This was just confirmed when our father told us all kids to get up and go to the back room of the house. Now, before we went, I saw something. There was a new pair of headlights shining through the front window of the house. Another car was on its way down a driveway, and as we ran to the back room of the house, we heard our dad growl at his brother, "Why the hell did you come here?" Although we were rushed into the back of the house, it was possible to hear some of what was going on outside. The other kids were even more terrified than I was, and I was trying my best to keep them calm, but I was also trying to hear what was going on outside of the house. I heard the front door open and close, so I was pretty sure that my dad and probably my uncle were both outside, and there was also a lot of loud yelling, although I was unable to make out the words. I had wondered why my mother hadn't come back to check on us, because it was obvious that something really bad was going down, but I figured she was probably watching it all from the front window. All I could hear was the yelling from different people. I couldn't make out exactly what anyone was saying, though. I was trying my best to, though. It was then that I heard a howl of pain, and I heard my mom scream. Immediately after that, I heard a shotgun blast. There was some more yelling and screaming, and the other kids, who had been doing their best at being calm, began to completely freak out. I had to do my best to calm them down as much as possible. However, I was able to make out the fact that I heard a car pulling quickly out of the driveway. There were some more noises, and I heard someone coming into the house. This worried me because I wondered about if whomever had pulled up shot my dad, and that was why my mom screamed. I was worried they were going to hurt my mom and then come after us as well. This continued until the door opened, and thankfully, it was my mom at the door. She ordered us into bed, without telling us what had happened. Now, as the years passed, I found out some, but never all the details of what happened. My uncle was in trouble with some guys for some reason. He came to my dad to seek help. The guys followed him to our house, and when confronted, one of them stabbed my uncle. This resulted in my dad firing the gun in the air to scare the people away. I was surprised to hear that he did not shoot anyone. The guys then ran off, and my dad took my uncle to the hospital. I never found out what my uncle had done, but that didn't matter to the story. Just being 7 years old in an old house, in a dark holler, hearing everything that had went on, was the scariest thing I had ever experienced. Number 2. Water Park. Because of an experience I had at a water park, I won't even get into the water for any reason nowadays. In fact, I don't even like taking a shower. I will take my showers, but I don't enjoy it very much. There is no way at all that I would ever take a bath again. I was 12 years old, and it was a very hot summer. I guess it probably wasn't anything like the hot summers we have now, but I remember it being pretty brutal. We didn't have air conditioning at the time, and going to the water park was going to be such an amazing treat, simply because it was a chance to have a completely nice and cool day. My mom, my dad, my older brother and younger sister all went to the park together. It was really a huge park with many different pools and slides and such. My sister was only about 7 years old, so she stayed with our parents when they went to the more parental area of the pool. My older brother was 15 at the time, and he went off to find girls, so I was really left by myself to find entertainment at the pool. I didn't mind, however, as I was the bookish and nerdish type that usually preferred being by myself anyway. I was a lot different than my brother. He was the big, athletic type that had a lot of friends. I was the smaller, nerdish type who had more bullies than I had friends. In fact, looking back at the behavior of many of the bullies who were in my school, it wouldn't surprise me today if they were serving prison sentences. I was sometimes a victim of it, but more often watched it happen to other people. Also, most of the bullies knew who my brother was, and he was a big boy who would easily beat the hell out of any of them. I was having a good time going down the slides, but mostly I just spent time in the pools. I really wasn't that good of a swimmer, but I could keep myself afloat, and I kept toward the side, often to keep myself from going under. I don't know how much time had passed, but we had gotten there pretty early, but I knew it wasn't lunchtime yet. But the sun had crawled higher up into the sky, and it was beaming down pretty hard on me. I figured that I would go and seek out my parents in case it was time for lunch, but felt that I wanted to go down one more water slide first. You know how kids are. One more time. So I got out of the pool and made my way over to the slide. There was, of course, quite a bit of a line, as there was with every slide, but I didn't mind too much. I was soaked and wet, so I was pretty still cooled off. Well, after a long wait, I finally reached the top of the slide, and when it was my turn, I was quite ready for the ride. However, I should mention that I enjoyed the thrill of the slides, but I was still a little frightened by them. But it was frightened, like you would be with a roller coaster. I wasn't scared to go on them, but I absolutely closed my eyes when I did. So I closed my eyes and slid down the water slide. I remember it pretty well because it was one that had all these twists and turns in it, and with my eyes closed, I wouldn't have any idea when I was about to hit the water at the bottom, so it just made it that much more fun. I hit the water, and at first, I got that really great splash feeling that anyone who's ever gone down a water slide already knows about. But before I could come back to the surface of the water, I felt someone grab a hold on me. and whoever this person was, he was obviously stronger than I was. At first, I thought it might be my older brother. He would sometimes be a bit of an older brother in the way that he would pick on me, but not really try to hurt me. But if it were him, then he would have let go after the initial grabbing. But this person wasn't doing that. He was holding me under the water, despite the fact that I was thrashing and trying to get away from him. After that, I accidentally breathed in a little water. I couldn't hold my breath any longer. It was probably one of the most painful experiences I have ever had in my entire life. And it didn't help that it made me panic more and more as I thrashed around and inhaled even more water. From that point, everything got dark, and I was certain I was drowning to death. My next memory was being in a hospital bed, actually, and when I woke up, I was very confused. I didn't understand where I was, how I got there, or what was going on. It took moments before the memory of going down the water slide and very nearly drowning came back to me, and when it did, I almost began to severely panic once again. I thankfully calmed down. What had happened is this bully named Dennis, who did give me problems at school, had noticed me on the top of the slide, so he got in the water and waited for me to come down, and then he held me under the water when he did. The lifeguards, which should have broken this up immediately, didn't. That is why I was under the water for so long. Thankfully, they finally pulled their heads out of their asses, saved me from Dennis, and then one of them performed rescue breathing on me. I have absolutely no memory to this day of surviving through the rescue breathing. Now, this story is kind of serious, but I do want to mention that the lifeguards weren't paying attention to what was going on, and I was a young boy who was drowning in the water. Any horror fan knows that if a lifeguard lets a young boy drown when he's being picked on by bullies, he'll come back with a hockey mask and get his revenge. Number 3. The Bleeding of the Crow. I went to high school in the early 90s. I had actually switched to many high schools because of complications in my family. I had moved back and forth between my parents for a while, and they both tended to move quite a bit. But finally, when I was a junior, we finally were in a school that I could stay at and graduate. I had a really interesting, large, and diverse group of friends. I hanged out with the punks, the alternative people. I was just sort of a plain cute guy, and I didn't really fit in with the group as far as image goes. You know, everyone had mohawks or bought their clothes from Hot Topic. Everyone was just different than me. I seemed kind of plain, so I felt that I had to develop an alternative personality. Now, I know nowadays there are a bunch of kids who dress goth-like and call themselves vampires. I adopted a vampire persona, but I was not a bit like the ones of today. First, I didn't change my look at all, but what I did was tell stories, and I had a really in-depth story about my life as a vampire. First, I went into vampire lore to explain why I could spend time in the daylight. Vampires normally could be in the sunlight, but their strength was sapped from them. They are stronger at night. I created a conflict between two groups of vampires known as the Lamb and the Crow. I was a member of the Crow. When we and my friends hung out after school talking, there was this guy named Matt who was there with me, and he got really fascinated with my vampire stories. I mean, everyone accepted them as just something that I talked about all the time, but Matt was really fascinated. One time after school, my friend cut her hand, and she was bleeding a bit. She asked me if I wanted to drink her blood. Before I had a chance to react, Matt grabbed her finger and actually started sucking her blood. Afterward, Matt asked me if this would get him membership in the Crow. I was weirded out by him, but I was still able to advance the storyline. I told him that all vampires drink blood. Members of the Crow have to drink the blood of an actual crow in front of another member. It seemed harmless to me at the time, This was until several days later, when my friends and I were hanging out in the school hallway. Matt came up to us, and he seemed really excited. He told me he had a surprise for me. Matt reached into his backpack and pulled out a dead crow. We were all shocked at first, but not as shocked as when Matt actually bit into the crow and began sucking the blood out of it. We all sat there in disgust and shock. Matt pulled his face back off the crow. There was blood on his lips, and he was smiling so big, like I had never seen anyone do before. "Am I the crow now?" Matt asked. I couldn't do anything but nod. It was the strangest and most bizarre thing I had ever seen up to that point, and I didn't know how to react. Matt was a junior too, but shortly after this event he was pulled out of school. He was a very smart guy, and we were told that he was actually going to college and skipping high school graduation. I hope that was true. He went really weird there for a while, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up in a psych ward or something. I mean, I feel a little guilty for starting the whole thing, but no one but Matt really took it seriously, and he took it way too seriously. I gave up the vampire thing after that, and then I adopted a psycho, Hannibal Lecter type personality. Fortunately, no one took that seriously enough to go out and eat a human being. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. Well, I feel that maybe this time I should record a new outro rather than just using that one that goes over and over again. I need to tell you guys what's been happening. One of the reasons that I have been inactive as much as I have been for months is because I've been suffering from some extreme nausea that causes me just to lie in bed all day. Well, we found out what the cause of it was. It was medication I was taking for cholesterol, which runs really high in my family. And it was making my liver enzymes go up, and it was causing me great nausea. Well, I stopped taking the medication, and the moment I did, I felt a lot better. And then they put me on Ozempic, which has put me down for the past 5 days, I think, but I feel better now, and feel like I'm up to recording and doing some work. So, I wanted to say that earlier I was talking about setting up a schedule for the channel, and I'm going to go ahead and do that, but I'm going to do it differently than I talked about before. Now, before I said I was going to do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I think I'm going to change that to Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. That gives me Sunday off where I don't really have to do anything, and I can start working on the video on Monday and put it out on Tuesday. So, look for our next video on Saturday, and then next week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And I feel great now. I think I'm used to the Ozempic, although I've only had one injection of it. Who knows what will happen after Saturday when I have to take my other one. But, I'll let you guys know. I'm finding stories, getting things written down, getting things recorded, and the cats are fine. If anyone was worried about the Buff, our dog, she's good too. She just had an infection that was like inside her leg, and it was deciding to purge the pus that was inside it, so it wasn't really just blood. And she's got it all bandaged up, and she's on antibiotics, so she's doing great. She's walking around, she's fine. She's an old girl. She probably doesn't have a lot of life left in her, but, we want to make her comfortable for the time that we do have with her. Anyhow, I hope everyone's doing good. Thank you for continuing to support me. I love you all, and I only have one thing left to say. Make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.